guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoiler-free review for The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This is an adult contemporary romance. It follows our main character of Lucy, and she works at a publishing firm, and she is the assistant to one of the CEOs. There are two CEOs because the firm kind of like merged with another firm, and so now she shares a working space for the last year or so with the other CEO's assistant, Josh, and her and Josh hate each other. Their work days basically consist of how they can annoy each other more and who can kind of win the battle. So they both end up in the running for the same promotion, and everything kind of goes from there. So as this is a romance book, I will be talking about different tropes and things that some people might consider spoilers. Romance books are a little bit different than other stories in that people go into romance books looking for particular tropes and things that they might like. So I'll be talking about some of those tropes here. If you don't want to hear anything about that, then you probably shouldn't be watching reviews for romance books in general, because they're just reviewed a little bit differently because of the nature of the genre. So this is a very, very popular hate to love type story. I will say I don't really consider this quite hate to love because of the timeline of how things occur in this story. I feel like the moment of attraction happens way quicker, and the like actual physical contact and things happens way quicker than a typical hate to love, in my opinion. So there's that element going on, and because of that, that made me not like as much about the rest of the story, because I didn't like how this relationship sort of started, because I felt like it was a lot of things sort of happened out of sequence, in my opinion. There's a lot of like, you know, romance tropes that do happen throughout, but I feel like the moment in which the will they won't they started, as far as like first kiss and things like that, happened way sooner in the story than I was expecting, and so it didn't really feel like a hate to love in that way, because I was like, you've already initiated contact. So it's not really hate to love, because at that point it's like you don't quite hate each other. There's also things about this author's writing style that I don't love. She makes a lot of comparisons about physical appearance that I just think are wrong and are not corrected in the story. From the beginning, the main character is always saying how Josh, because he's a bad person, should be like a hunchback or have acne or be really ugly. This says a lot about just disability and such, that someone with a hunchback should be like a bad person, or that they like did something to have this disability. Same thing with like acne or things like that, that like you're one, that those things are like ugly, and also that ugliness is caused by how you are as a person. Like that is a deep-seated societal belief that is wrong. That it's not that you physically manifest how you are, that's like a punishment for bad behavior, and that's something that's like very deeply rooted in a lot of like puritanical societal cultural things. So don't love that. Don't love that at all. There's also a lot of different things, like as far as her writing. At one point she is putting on lipstick, and she says that it's a lipstick of like slit wrists, you know, so trigger for self-harm there, like really inappropriate. You can even say blood red. You don't need to say slit wrists. Like it's just not appropriate. So I felt like at times the writing style was almost like immature, because I'm like, do you not have the wherewithal, and also have this capacity editor? Did you not have the wherewithal to know like these are not appropriate statements to be making? There is the trope of like very big man, very small woman. That's also throughout the story. So Josh is always talked about as being like this really super fit guy who's really in strict control of his diet, like barely eats, which also I'm like, that's accurate for people that have very buff bodies. Also, it's really unhealthy and toxic to be that into fitness. Just letting you know, because I used to be there. So it's that I'm just like, ugh. So that's not great, but I get it. I'm also attracted to very tall, like big people. So this tall, buff guy, I get it. He's super hot, whatever. But then you also have her tininess really emphasized. Like at one point there's a whole line about like her very small, like petite, tiny knees. I'm like, okay. And just like how small she is, and how like she can be picked up, and if she's wearing heels, like this is exactly how tall she is. And it just like her smallness is really talked about a lot, which I also like. I get that this is a romance trope that some people do like, but I'm like, the smallness associated with femininity and the largeness associated with masculinity is also a binary that I just don't love. She talks about having an ex-boyfriend who was like 5'6", and they referred to him as like a little boy, and he was no way, you know, he could never pick her up, and I'm like, strength has nothing to do with how tall you are. Like, there are plenty of like short people who are very fucking strong. I don't understand. So a lot of that stuff, I'm just like, I don't love this dichotomy that you've set up. I kind of got a sense from the beginning that this hate to love trope would always be like, he was mean to you because he secretly liked you and didn't like that he liked you, and I don't love that vibe. And that's the vibe that you get from the beginning. So whether that's true or not, I'm not saying, but like, that's the vibe that you sort of get from the beginning. And I just don't love that, like, man can't handle his feelings, so she's mean to her. Like, I just don't get it. And he also has a big problem with nice guys. While that's kind of a thing that I'm like okay with, because I do find like just very nice, pure characters to be very boring. It's just something that I don't love. So that was something that I kind of was like, okay, yeah, like you need someone a little more interesting than like the typical nice guy, whatever, because that's just the vibe that I get with like pure nice characters. I just find them too predictable because a pure nice character is always going to do the pure nice thing. So I'm just like, I don't really love that with like any kind of book, whether it's romance or not. But at the same time, I'm like, why are you attacking nice people all the time? Like, why do you have such a problem with niceness? I don't get it. I will say, because I've just been, I feel like, complaining about a lot of elements of this book, I did like a lot of the romance stuff and the romance scenes. Like I said earlier, the problem was that I felt like a lot of them happened too quickly, and I didn't like how we got there and the sequence in which a lot of them happened. I also feel like a lot of them could have like been split up into different parts of the story, and it would have made more sense to me, because some things happened earlier that I'm like, that shouldn't have happened until later when you had a like deeper bond. Like so like individual scenes I really liked, and I liked a lot of the vibe of that, but at the same time I was like, I feel like the sequencing of these things and the timing of them is a little off in a way that I can't quite get into it and enjoy it, because I don't like how we got here. I also felt that the characters got a little too close too fast, and they were doing a lot of things when their relationship hadn't quite been worked out, and I was like, why are you so affectionate? I like the affection in the scenes, but you're so affectionate. And especially her, she was very clingy affectionate, which is just not a vibe that I like. Just not, I don't love it. I just don't love it, especially for a hate to love type thing. So those were things that just like kind of bothered me. I do like a lot of elements of their dynamic as just kind of like giving as good as they get. That's an element of hate to love that I really enjoy. I also like how they sort of stick up for one another. There's an element of her sticking up for him at certain points that I do like. So again, there's some things about their dynamic I really liked, but I felt like for as hyped of a book as this is, and that's why I'm kind of talking about some of these things that I didn't enjoy, I was expecting to love it a lot more, and there were a lot of things about the story and the beats and like some of the tropes that, again, I liked some of the tropes that existed, but I wanted them to exist in a different order or to be done a little bit differently. So I just didn't feel like this was the hate to love that I was quite wanting or expecting or needing. I just didn't like it as much as I liked The Unhoneymooners, for example. So overall, I gave this probably 3 stars. I originally said 3.5 because I do just like, romances are just generally like fairly enjoyable, but at the same time I just had a lot of problems with this, and I didn't like immediately love these characters. I think I'm really going to enjoy the movie, because they are optioning, or they have optioned this as a movie. They're going to make it into a movie, and they're going to make a really good rom-com. I could see a lot of it in my head, but I just had a lot of problems with some of the things, some of the tropes and the ways they were used, that I just didn't love this universally as much. I felt like lots of the characters were like flat at some points, and just like, they just didn't feel like they had a lot of continuity, because again, I feel like the placement of events and things just not quite where I hoped it would be. So I did do a reading vlog of this book that does have spoilers in it, so I talk a little bit more in depth about some of the things that I might have liked or didn't like with spoilers in there, so if you want to check that out, I will link that on the screen. So comment below, let me know what you thought of The Hating Game. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye!